meeting of December 18th, 2024. We'll begin with preliminary matters. Ms. Gu, do you have any requests for continuances, withdrawals, postponements, or addition of ex-agenda items?
I believe there is an item, Roman numeral I, B2. It's Law 344 La Marina Drive for Coastal Development, CDP. And that item has been postponed to the January 22nd in the new year, 2025.
Okay, very good. So that's postponed to date certain and will be on the staff hearing officer agenda on January 22nd. Any other continuances, withdrawals, postponements, or addition of ex-agenda items?
No.
Very good.
Thank you.
With that, I'll continue. Any announcements or appeals?
In general, no, we don't.
Okay. I do have an announcement on 303 Cooper Road. This is a coastal development permit for an accessory dwelling unit. This is in the non-appealable jurisdiction of the city's coastal zone. It is for a new 1,000 square foot detached two-story accessory dwelling unit. This application is under jurisdiction of the staff hearing officer for a coastal development permit and exempt from further environmental review under section 15303 of the CEQA guidelines. Pursuant to Santa Barbara Municipal Code, section 2844110, when a proposed development involves the addition of an accessory dwelling unit to an existing single-family residence, the application is reviewed by a staff hearing officer without a public hearing. Staff hearing officer does not issue a decision on the application until at least 10 calendar days after the notice has been provided to the public. Staff hearing officer may receive and consider written comments from the public, but without a public hearing. Ms. Gu, I didn't see any written public comments. Do you have any record of comments on this item?
No, I do not. There are no public comments. And on Zoom, I do not see any raised hands. Thank you.
Okay, very good. And I reviewed the staff report and went out to the site. I can make the findings for CEQA and for the coastal development permit and approve the project subject to conditions of approval outlined in the staff report dated December 11th, 2024. This decision is not appealable. However, this project is also subject to single-family design board review and will be returning after this decision. Thank you. Ms. Gu, do we have comments from members of the public pertaining to items not on this agenda?
In general, we do not have any public comment. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll move on to projects. The first being 308 West Yananali Street. Our planner is Pilar Plummer, who will have a presentation on this item. This is for two mods. Interior setback modification to allow encroachments for equipment in the western interior setback, including posts and window and door improvements, and an interior setback modification to allow encroachments for equipment and posts in the eastern interior setback. Ms. Plummer, when you're ready, and Ms. Gu, if you could switch over to Ms. Plummer's computer, please.
Thank you. As you noted, I'm Pilar Plummer, Associate Planner with the City of Santa Barbara. I'll be giving the staff presentation for this project. So the project site is located at 308 West Yananali Street. This is a photo of the existing residence, and we can just go through some photos for context of the overall neighborhood. It's a pretty unique site in that it's a three-story residence on a pretty narrow lot of 31 feet width, and it's relatively deep. Overall, in the context of the neighborhood, there's a multi-unit development next door with a driveway access, as well as a single unit residence to the left of the project site. There's also a parking lot behind the project site. These are some photos of some as-built improvements at the rear of the residence that are going to be removed as part of the project. And going to the site plan. Okay. So as you can see on the screen, this is the existing lot. It's 31 feet wide, and it is subject to setback requirements. It's also in the coastal zone, so subject to Title 28. And the interior setback requirement for this particular project that applies to the first and second story is 6 feet, and then 10 feet for the third story portions of the residence. It's a similar setback from the front, although it's 10 and then 20 at the third story. And then similar to the rear, there is a 6-foot setback that applies to the first floor, and then a 10-foot setback that applies to the second and third floor. So the overall project involves relatively minor improvements to the existing residence. I do want to point out that the site is non-conforming in a number of ways. So there's no on-site parking currently, and the project does not require them to provide compliant parking given its limited scope. The project site is also non-conforming slightly to the interior setbacks, just by a few inches on both the east and western side. And then it's also subject to nonconformity for the solar access given the height of the existing building. So the project does involve some removal of some as-built items that are within the project site. I showed you the photo of a fireplace and really just kitchen area at the back. That's been an outstanding issue on the site, so this project will address that. Also, I'll show you on the elevations, but towards the third floor of the residence, there is a spiral staircase that essentially acted as an access point to the roof deck, and that's going to be removed as part of the project. As well, there is a mezzanine that was never permitted that is going to actually be removed as part of this project, and then they're going to be installing a new mezzanine which does comply with the zoning ordinance requirements. Other improvements, really, it's just some at-grade equipment. Various items include some heat compressors. There are some steel posts that are going to be installed for structural purposes with the residents, and really they result in relatively minor encroachments. The steel posts represent about an 8 to 9 inch encroachment in both the east and western setbacks. The heat compressors on the east side represent a 1 foot, 5.5 inch encroachment into the setback. There's also a water softener and some relocation of windows and doors. So just to show you the So you can see here, this is the mezzanine area that they're going to be installing as part of the project. There's also a small balcony that's going to be installed, and if we look at the elevations, you can see that here. So this is new. It is below the solar access line, so it does comply with that. And then, yeah, like I said, it's relatively just minor changes to the existing residence, and it's a really constrained site. So with that, staff is supportive of the project. As I mentioned, the existing site as it is already encroaches, or the existing building as it is already encroaches slightly into the setback, so it's really challenging to provide equipment that's an amenity for the residents. Or, like I said, for the posts, which provide support for the residents without encroaching into the interior setback. And there's no relief in Title 28 for these type of encroachments, like there is some flexibility in Title 30, as well as the window and door improvements. The requirement is if you are increasing the size or number of windows and doors within the setback, that also triggers a modification. So staff is supportive because the project site is constrained. Again, I mentioned it's a very narrow lot. It's also quite small in size at 2,588 square feet. And the encroachments are minor in nature, which really just work with the existing residents and don't really detract from the existing setbacks in a substantial way. And there's no material issue related to noise or privacy that was observed with this project. It does qualify for a CEQA exemption under 15301 for existing facilities because it's just minor improvements. And also I mentioned it is in the coastal zone, specifically the non-appealable jurisdiction, and it does qualify for a coastal exemption. So that concludes my presentation. The applicant is here if they want to add anything.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Plummer. And I see the applicant, Ms. Allen, and the architect, Mr. Burnell here. Ms. Allen, is there anything you would like to add or speak to? Okay. There are 3 options.
Thank
If
you,
you
Trish
could do-
Allen with Steps.
Tracy Burnell, architect for the project.
Thank you, Mr. Gullett and Ms. Plummer. That was a very thorough summary. I think Ms. Plummer covered everything. I just wanted to reiterate that it is a very unique property in its configuration, a single-family residence in a multifamily zone also, and very narrow, and certainly some significant site constraints, which I think is exactly why we have the ability to request some zoning modifications from the code, pretty technical in nature. One minor thing to mention is we did present the proposed improvements to the single-family design board recently and received, their positive aesthetic comments around what we're doing. And again, I'd say the project's primarily an interior remodel and, just cleaning this up and repainting it and that kind of thing. Tracy, did you want to add anything else? Or we're
I
just
don't think so. The only thing I would say is that the interior of the house, everything is substandard. It's just, there isn't enough space. If you look at the size of the bedrooms and the things that we're doing, it's just cramped. So, and it was also the second and third floor were added in the early 80s, and it basically has no lateral reinforcing at all, which is shocking to me, but it was before the Northridge earthquake. And so it's really an important safety feature to get the steel moment frame in, and if we bring that into the house, it just, again, cramps the spaces more. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Any questions? We're here.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all. Ms. Good, do we have any public comment on this item?
No, I do not have any public comment, and checking on Zoom, I do not see any raised hands. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you for the application, the staff presentation, and additional information. Yeah, this property is extremely small, extremely narrow. This is a very large, tall house of a style we don't see very much of in this town. So certainly appreciate the refresh, giving more life to this house, and adding some minor improvements to it, and doing so, having to go through this process. But I concur with the staff's findings on the project, the CEQA findings and the findings for the modification, and approve the modifications. They are subject to appeal. There's a 10-day appeal period due to the holiday that closes on January 6th. If it is appealed, Ms. Plummer would contact you, and if anyone's interested in appealing, there's information on the website, and you could come into the public counter. We're back open on January 6th. So thank you very much. I'll move on to the next item.
Thank you.
Yeah, so our next item is 1517 Shoreline Drive, and Ms. Plummer will be presenting on this project as well.
Mr. Gullett. So this project site is located in the appealable jurisdiction of the coastal zone, and we can kind of walk through the plans. basically a new residence. There is an existing residence already on the project site. There's some photos here. It is located on Shoreline Drive. And the existing residence is a two-story building with a one-car garage. I do want to point out that it is non-conforming to parking because of that. The requirement is 2 covered spaces. And it's a relatively small site at 4,902 square feet. And the minimum size typically for a property in this zone is 7,500 square feet, so it is undersized for the project area. The overall purpose of this application is to do a coastal development permit, as I mentioned, because it's in the coastal zone. But during the process, it was determined that this does need a front setback modification. The project here includes, and actually these are some good renderings just so you can see the difference from the street from Shoreline Drive. So this is the project site is right now. This is the 2 adjacent properties, and this is the new project. Really, you're going to be seeing the garage primarily from Shoreline Drive, but there will be some landscape improvements that are going to be done as well for this project. So just going to and you can see some of those with the landscape plan here. They're going to be subject to public improvements, and really that's part of the trigger for the setback modification. But they'll be doing a new sidewalk. They're going to be having a new driveway, landscaping here. And the overall project is to do compliant parking. So they're going to have 2 covered spaces within a garage. You can see that a little bit better on the site plan here. And then there's a pony wall here, and then a workshop area that really just provides multiple uses for the residents, including storage, and then a relatively small residence at 424 square feet. So it is quite small. There's a covered porch here, and then they have their open yard at the back. And then if you see here, they are showing their 20-foot front setback measured from the back of dedication of easement. So I think it's important to note that were it measured from the property line, the garage would comply, but under our ordinance, we do measure from the back of dedication. So it does clip a small portion of the garage. In this particular case, part of the justification for the modification is that they do want to do a low-profile building that really works with Shoreline Drive while still meeting compliant parking and not encroaching into the open yard. Also, given the size of the residence, the workshop area does serve as an amenity for the building. And going to some of the elevations here. So this is the view from Shoreline Drive here. This is a side view of the residence. There's a covered porch area. This is facing towards Shoreline Drive. And yeah, you can see it as well here, building slight encroachment there. So the overall project, in terms of staff supportability for at least the front setback modification, is because the building will be providing compliant parking that currently is not existing on site. It's a relatively minor encroachment, and when you look at the site plan as well as the landscape plan, really the front setback, which the purpose is to provide really compatible development within the neighborhood, a visual setback that provides light and air, that is all going to be maintained. And there's going to be new public improvements in landscaping, which also work with the definition for a setback. In terms of coastal policies and staff's review of the project, it is consistent with the Coastal Act and Coastal Land Use Plan. The project is in a single-family residential zone, the E3 zone, and they are providing a building that provides compatible development. While this project was exempt from design review, given the height of the building, it's less than 17 feet tall. It is consistent with the types of buildings within the immediate area, which are 1 and 2 stories. They are providing landscaping, so that is also consistent with coastal policies. It's within an area of access to public services. So in that respect, also it's not a bluff top property, so there's no special geologic improvements that need to happen with respect to the building. Yeah. So with that, the project does qualify for a CEQA exemption for a new construction. And staff supports both the modification and coastal development permit for this project. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. And I see the architect, Mr. Oxner, is here. Mr. Oxner, do you have anything to add to the presentation? And welcome.
Good morning.
And welcome back, Ms. Allen.
There we go. I appreciate staff support of the modification in the CDP. I just want to make a comment relative to the easement that's been applied to the property and just the concern for maybe this and future projects moving forward. I can understand the public benefit of the widening of the sidewalk, which is admirable. That's a very busy thoroughfare. The use of an easement is a bit difficult, I think, relative to existing structures along there, as well as liability reasons. I'm curious as to the indemnification required by the applicant to the city and how that relates to what liability and maintenance could occur, and think that maybe there may be better ways of handling the widening of that sidewalk as opposed to an easement, as it also assumes a property line as it extends the setback from the edge of the easement and not the property line, which seems a little out of character with the zoning use. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Allen, do you have anything to add at this point? Ms. Plummer, do you have any comment regarding the easement for the sidewalk? And in other instances, the city has required dedication.
It's required for this type of project because it involves complete demolition or substantial redevelopment. That is the requirement currently. And as I said, it's just based on our definition for a setback that we have to measure from the back of dedication. So that's all I can point to at this time. Yeah. For this site. I do also want to point out, I didn't mention this fully other than that the site is undersized for the area, but really it is challenging more for these smaller sites where you do have to deal with both the setback requirements. This has a 20-foot setback requirement, and you have to do 1,250 square feet of open yard. So it really can be more challenging if the lot is undersized to meet that requirement without triggering a modification.
Very good, thank you. And my understanding is this requirement is fairly new. This is the first time that I've seen it, and it may be that we need to adjust other processes because with this is a great benefit to the community to expand sidewalk in some of these areas, especially this well-traveled sidewalk along shoreline. However, it does create the need for modification and other issues. The other consideration, transportation-wise, for this dedication is typically the city likes to see a distance such that a car can completely get off the right-of-way and be in the driveway without encroaching over the sidewalk. I'm comfortable that distance is provided here because we do see around the city cars hanging over sidewalks and creating accessibility issues. Thank you for the comment. We'll follow up on the liability issue. It's a good question. Ms. Gu, do we have any public comment on this item?
For this particular item, I did not receive any public comment. On checking Zoom, I do not see any raised hands for comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. With that, I'll close public comment. thank you all for your contributions to this item. I approve the modification in the coastal development permit based on the findings provided in the staff report and subject to the conditions in the staff report. And like the other item, this may be appealed within 10 calendar days because city offices are closed. That would extend till January 6th, 2025. And with that, I'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks for that.
Yep.
How does one file an appeal if everything closed?
I don't know.